So I'm going to start out here with another gesture drawing using Vine charcoal instead of pencil. This is our sketch charcoal, very easy to wipe away. Again, I want you to spend at least 50% of your time looking at your still life, trying to work the entire page at once. You should have a pretty good idea of your composition just in this Vine charcoal before you commit. So our goal in this first full value drawing is going to be to move away from contour line. Of course, this first sketch is starting out in strictly contour line, but we'll be pulling all of our values to the edges of all of these lines so they disappear. Step one is you're going to split the entire page into dark, medium, and light. So your darkest darks, you're going to generalize your middle tones into a middle gray, and then leave your lightest tones white. So here my darkest darks are really that shadow on the drapery and the little bowl in front. If you're having trouble, squint at your still life. This will clarify and separate your values for you. Don't forget to add your shadows. Those are going to be very helpful, especially if you have an object that is coming up against them, because that will help you get rid of contour lines. You see on the top left of that little white cup, I no longer have a contour line because the white of the cup is coming right up against the darkness of the shadow behind it. Again, it's great if your objects come off the page. That allows your eye an entry into the composition. So once you have a pretty clear distinction across the entire page of dark, medium, and light, you're going to approach each individual object in the same way and look for the darkest areas on the object, middle, light. And from there, you're going to use your kneaded eraser and your chamois to bridge the gap between those values to create more smooth transitions between them. Also at this point, you'll be using your chamois, kneaded eraser, and charcoal interchangeably. Each one of them you can consider a pretty integral drawing tool. Here, for example, I'm going to start breaking down this lightest object, the white ceramic cup. So I'm looking for my darkest darks, which can be difficult to determine on a white object. And it's okay if we need to go darker at first and then pull all of those values up. As we adjust it to all of the objects around it. Taking a step back from your drawing is really important. I would suggest doing that every 10 minutes or so, every 15 minutes. it can be very difficult to see even very clear mistakes if you are just completely absorbed in the drawing. Here I'm actually just using my chamois to add more value. I don't want to go too dark because that's where my light source is hitting right there in front of the cup, but it is a darker value. It's a darker tone on the fabric covering that box. The way you use your chamois and the way you use your eraser can determine what the texture of your objects and surfaces look like as well. So you're thinking about value, you're thinking about creating volume, but the kind of mark making that you engage in can also tell your viewer about the softness of the material that you're drawing, the shiny glossiness of the material that you're drawing. So feel free to experiment with the way you make marks, both reductively and additively. It's also important to note that having the widest range of value within your entire drawing is going to create a sense of depth that you will not be able to acquire if all of your values and tones are living in a middle gray, or even if they're living from like 2 to 8 on that value scale that we did. You want to have at least a 1 and a 10 somewhere in the drawing. So the lightest light that you can erase out of that drawing or leave on the page, and the darkest dark that you can fit underneath an object deep inside of a shadow. That difference, that width and value, is going to help your image pop. So even within just this tiny little shape of the handle here, I want to think about maintaining as wide a range of values as I can, especially considering this is a shiny white object. The areas where the light is going to be hitting it, I want to erase them out as high as I can, but there are still some areas also where the handle comes up and hits against the cup or underneath the shadow of the curve that are very, very dark. So having that range, even on just that little object, helps create a sense of volume. And I'm pushing that right now too on the very bottom of the cup. I'm pushing those dark darks pretty far, even though it's a very minuscule little segment. It's helping the cup really push forward, feel round, feel like it has some sense of weight. So again, I'm starting with another object and I'm breaking it down into 3 values. Got my lightest lights out there with the light source hitting the rim of this little ceramic bowl. My darkest darks, the shadows underneath that rim and on that right edge. and my middle grays. And then my goal is simply going to be to blend those in the correct places. And also to pull value up to the edge of any of all of my objects to get rid of any contour lines that I needed to establish the general shape of the form. Your pink pearl is going to be really good for really getting in there and pulling charcoal up off your page. I like to try to keep a somewhat sharp edge on it. Eventually, of course, that will dull as you use it. You can easily just take a pair of scissors and cut a little bit of the edge off to get a nice sharp new edge. Here, also notice my mark making is pretty quick, but I'm working in a slightly different way than I have been for my other objects that are smoother. You can kind of see the line work that I'm leaving on the page. I'm trying to create some sense of texture to distinguish the drapery from the rest of the objects. Et voila!